The TTC450 Ultra is marketed as a desktop CNC that combines the best features of its two trees predecessors, with enough rigidity and power to even work on metals. At this price point, that puts it in the race for one of the most capable desktop CNCs of 2026. So let's take a closer look and see what this machine is really all about. In this video, I'll do a quick unboxing while going through the specs, assemble the machine step by step to see what features it offers, and finally do some testing to see if it actually delivers on the promises. Since I own both the TTC450 Pro and the TTC6050, with the 6050 being my go-to machine for most tasks, I can't help but compare the new machine to the old ones. I want to see which good features they brought over and whether they fixed some of the not so good ones. I've added chapters so you can skip to any section you're interested in, but I do recommend watching the full video, as important information is spread throughout. Let's start by seeing what's in the box. Right on top is the manual. It's clear that some assembly is required. Not as much as on the 6050, but definitely more than the 450 Pro, which comes almost fully pre-assembled. There's a large bag containing the standard 2 trees starter bit kit, the set probe, and the anti-vibration feet for the machine. You also get maintenance tools and accessories, all the screws neatly organized in clearly labeled bags, work surface clamps, brackets for the corner joints, assembly tools, and a USB cable. Next, you have protective gear, hearing protection and safety glasses, along with a plastic test sheet. The gantry cables come pre-sheathed and clearly marked. 2 trees have previously received some criticism for cable setup being a bit confusing, so this is a very good sign. The power supply and control box look very similar to the one used on the 6050, just with a metallic finish that matches the design of the machine really well. One detail worth pointing out is the locking connectors on the cable plugs. On older models, I've occasionally had connections come loose when moving the controller around, and it's great to see that 2 trees have clearly listened to feedback and fixed this. A big plus with this machine is that it ships with a 500-watt spindle right out of the box. While I like the 450 Pro, I always felt it was slightly underpowered, so this is probably the biggest advantage the 450 Ultra has over the Pro model. The Z-axis motor and mechanics are the same as on the 6050, with a powerful and precise motor and very solid construction. But there's something new here as well, an extra layer of dust protection in the form of opposing brushes that shields the moving parts. That's a very clever addition. Next up are the gantry columns. They come with limit switches already installed and cabling integrated into the design in exposed areas. I like this approach. Fewer loose cables is always a good thing. We then have the solid side panels designed to further stabilize the frame. These also include dust protection brushes, which I'm curious to see in action. Along with those, we have the Y-axis brace and the threaded rods for both the Y and X axis. In the next tray are the motors for the X and Y axis. These are powerful stepper motors, giving the machine a claimed precision of 0.05 millimeters. Then there's the spindle mount and the gantry with the X-axis already installed. The construction is solid and feels very sturdy. That said, I do miss the dust protection here. The front is sealed, but the back of the X-axis is completely open. I actually think the dust protection on the 6050 is better in this area, which is understandable given the price difference. Still, it's something I'd love to see carried over to future machines. Finally, there's the pre-assembled base, including the Y-axis sliding mechanism and the MDF spoil board with threaded inserts for fixtures. Now it's time to assemble the machine. The manual has clear step-by-step instructions, so the process should be fairly straightforward. I start with the pre-assembled frame and bed, attaching the feet. They have rubber soles and should help reduce vibration. Next, I prepare one gantry column and attach it to the Y-axis brace. This slides under the machine and mounts directly to the linear rails on the frame. I repeat the process on the other side. The movement is smooth and the brace feels very solid. It can also be fine-tuned using several adjustment screws. I continue working on the Y-axis by attaching the motor to the rear. Then I flip the machine over and insert the bearing and the threaded rod through the brace, securing it to the motor at the other end. Moving on to the X-axis, I start by attaching the motor to the gantry column. At this stage, you decide which side you want the controller box on. I really like that you can configure this to suit your own CNC setup, and even change it later if needed. At this point, you can clearly see that the moving parts of the x-axis are more exposed than on the 6050. The front is sealed, but the back is open. This is definitely something I'd suggest ttrees improve in future designs. Next, I attach the Z-axis module. It comes pre-assembled and mounts to the gantry using a set of solid screws. After that, the spindle mount goes on, followed by the spindle itself. Now it's time to close up the frame using the side panels. Notice how the brushes on the panels interlock with the brushes on the base, creating a surprisingly good seal while still allowing the column to move freely along the y-axis. I haven't seen this kind of solution before, but it seems like a good one. Before starting the cabling, I snap on the corner brackets. These give quick and easy access to the side panels for maintenance. Then it's time to connect everything, starting with the spindle motor. Most of the cabling is clearly labeled and easy to follow, although I did have to stop and think a bit when mounting the gantry cables. Instead of a traditional drag chain, ttrees use a spring-style cable guide, and it wasn't immediately obvious from the manual how it should be installed. Once I figured it out though, it actually turned out to be a very smart solution that keeps the cables tidy and out of the way. The connections are essentially foolproof, and seeing locking connectors on the Z-axis module as well is a nice touch. Overall, ttrees have done an excellent job with cable management here. With very few loose cables, this is close to perfect. After connecting and locking everything into the controller box, the machine is fully assembled. I like the clean, minimal look of this machine, especially knowing how many clever features are built into it. But looks are one thing, performance is what really matters, so let's move on to some testing. Before putting it into its final position, I'll do a quick systems check. I test all axes, controls and movements, and everything looks good so far. The machine is now in place in my CNC corner and ready for testing. I do have a M2 CNC vacuum here, but I'm deliberately not using it. I want to see how well the dust protection actually holds up on its own. For control software, I'm using easel. It connects immediately, but the 450 Ultra isn't in the machine library yet. Not a big deal though, the manual setup is quick and easy. The first thing I want to try is the V-bit that comes with the machine. I ran a bunch of tests on different settings and designs, and the machine plunges to full depth on these V-carve designs without any trouble. I am honestly not very impressed with this bit though. It doesn't really seem to cut that well. Might be that my settings are wrong, but it isn't sharp to the touch either. Maybe I just got a bad one. If you used this bit yourself, let me know what your experience has been. Next, I want to test precision properly, and a good way to do that is with a detailed engraved design using the 30-degree engraving bit. I'm engraving a design onto the lid of this box I'm making using the settings recommended in easel. I did rush the centering a bit, and you can see the design is slightly off-center. That's annoying, but it's completely on me, not the machine. Ends up really sharp and crisp, even with that tiny detail. As a wood turner, I make a lot of these boxes, and I'm always looking for ways to decorate them and make them stand out. The rotary unit from ttrees lets me do that, adding precise engravings or cuts to boxes or even to the outside of the rim of a small bowl. Here I'm doing a leveling pass with a 3mm upcut bit on a test piece before engraving the actual box. Nothing extreme, 1mm depth at 1000mm per minute, but it works like a charm. Once everything looks good, I move on to engraving the box itself. Let's take a look. It works really well, but I have noticed a rattling noise coming from the y-axis when running the machine. I checked everything I could think of, but I couldn't find that obvious cause. I will investigate further after this job. The rotary unit doesn't come with the TTC450 Ultra by default, but it's sold separately or as part of a bundle. It works with all ttrees machine and actually with any GRBL CNC if you have a 4-pin adapter. It really opens up a lot of new possibilities and turns a fairly plain box into something much more unique. This is a good chance to see how the brush dust protection works, and it's clearly doing its job. Been running a few engravings, and the brushes are full of dust, but not much seemed to be getting into the machine itself. As for the Y-axis rattle, I ended up fixing it by adding some foam between the Y rod and the base at the far end. That completely stops the rattle, but it's something I want to follow up on, so I'll check with 2 trees and update you in the comments. Lastly, I want to test a different material, aluminium. On the 2 trees website, there's an image of this machine doing a large relief cut on a solid aluminium block, which honestly makes me a bit skeptical. I don't have a block of aluminium, just this 1mm aluminium sheet, and a bit that 2 trees says is meant for aluminium, even though the bag is labeled PCB. Even with limited supplies, this is enough to see whether the machine can handle aluminium at all. I'm doing a pocketed number first, and then I'll see if I can cut all the way through as well. I'm doing 2 passes to a total depth of 0.3 millimeters, and it actually does it. The aluminium doesn't melt, the tool doesn't bind, and there's no obvious vibration or instability in the frame. For the cut-through, I'm using the same depth per pass at 350 mm per minute, and it handles that too. There's clearly some heat, but nothing that causes damage. Now I really want to get my hands on some thicker aluminium and try something more ambitious, but that'll have to be another video. Overall, the machine isn't perfect. The dust collection, while improved over the 450 Pro, still doesn't come close to the well-designed solution of the 6050. I also had an unexplained Y-axis rattle that I had to fix myself, and the included V-bit, at least in my case, isn't very impressive. That said, there's a lot to like here too. You get the powerful 500-watt spindle that the 450 Pro was missing, much better structural rigidity inspired by the 6050. Improved dust protection, secure locked connectors that fix the connection issues of the 6050, and much cleaner cable management than either of its predecessors. For this price, it offers a very solid, tidy and capable package, and features like a 500-watt spindle, decent dust protection and good overall build quality are surprisingly rare in this price range. If you found this review useful, please check out my other projects, tests and reviews on my channel. Thanks for watching.